Welcome and good morning, bon dia. My name is Nancy Duxbury and I've been asked to moderate this session. I'm a researcher at the Center for Social Studies at the University of Coimbra, Portugal. And before moving to Portugal, I lived in different areas of Canada. So that's my background. I'll just keep it brief. My area of research is looking at the integration of cultural considerations within urban or local sustainability planning. And so the topic of this session is of personal and professional interest. I'd like to thank the Foundation for organizing this event and Sasha, who's somewhere, for inviting us all to participate in this, and the session speakers in advance for your knowledge and input. At the beginning of the conference, we were given an overview of the event, which explicitly stated that our goal was to influence the future of policy. Up to this point, with the exception of the previous session here, there hasn't been a lot of discussion in that direction, and it's to this focus that we now turn. To conceiving and constructing the policy directions, the planning processes and structures, the institutional frameworks, and the funding designs and related initiatives to foster transitions towards cultures of sustainability, towards culturally sensitive sustainability, towards ensuring that the arts and cultural considerations are guiding our collective development towards more sustainable ways of living, working, and being, and that enable art's transformative potential to work in these processes. At the beginning of the conference, following the introduction around influencing the policy of the future, it quickly went to cultural policy. And I think that's part of the answer, but it's definitely not the only thing we should be considering, as you'll discover here. And that from a broader perspective, introducing and integrating cultural components and lenses on all other policies is also part of what's needed. The struggles and innovations for changing policy and planning systems, structures, and processes is very much in process, as this panel will attest. This conference itself takes place within a constellation of efforts internationally, many bubbling up from below, increasingly connected but not always so, and this is also a work in process. The event is a platform for building linkages. It performs an important bridging role, bringing together agents of change from a diversity of situations and declaratively grappling with the place of arts and culture in our social transformations, which in many ways are defined by transitions to more sustainable ways of acting on this planet. And I'll just quickly introduce our three speakers, and who are all leaders in this field, I guess you could generally call it, emerging. She's very good at reactions. He's a leader. We'll vote later. Declared leaders. Who have been asked by the organizers to bring forward a policy idea. And I have a hint, there's a lot more than one policy idea that will come out from each of the speakers. Jordi Pascual, closest to me here, leads the international dissemination of Agenda 21 for Culture and coordinates the Committee on Culture of the United Cities and Local Governments organization. He also teaches urban cultural policies and management at the Open University of Catalonia. His main area of action is the role of culture in sustainable development, and he is often involved by international organizations on projects and programs on cultural policies, sustainable development, and international cooperation. And just a plug for one of the documents. We don't have a copy of Agenda 21 for Culture here. It's all online. But this is out there, entitled Culture, the Fourth Pillar of Sustainable Development, which was approved by the United Cities and Local Governments Executive Committee last year. Which brings me to point that this event explicitly tying arts and culture to sustainability serves as a landmark going forward in the same way that the passing of this document does, and sort of solidifying this as a growing area to contend with. Secondly, Adrienne Goehler is a psychologist by training, a curator, a writer, and a former president of the Fine Arts University in Hamburg. She later served as a senator for science, research, and culture in the Berlin municipality. From 2002 to 2006, she was curator of the Berlin Culture Funds. And she'll talk about some of her many other activities in the presentation. She is also the author of the discussion paper for this, one of the discussion papers for this event that's also available out there, entitled Conceptual Thoughts on Establishing a Fund for Aesthetics and Sustainability, and is currently writing a book on establishing a basic income grant for all, one of your many passions, for everybody. So that will come in as well. Dan Baron-Cohen, who you met briefly yesterday, is a community-based arts educator and cultural activist from Wales who lives and works in the Brazilian Amazon. His past 14 years have been dedicated to the popularization of pedagogies of cultural action for transformation in collaboration with arts education networks and universities in Africa, Asia, Latin America, North America, and Europe. And it goes on, but I'll let him explain some of his more recent projects. So I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to Jordi. We are starting a bit late, so we're going to go through presentations and then follow with general discussions and what I expect to have lots of questions and comments. And you've been asked to stay to 10 minutes. We'll try. My time.
Guten Tag. Good morning. Thank you, Sasha, for suggesting my name to be speaking in this conference, and thank you to the organizers for having convened such a wonderful conference with outstanding people. I am learning a lot yesterday and today. I am speaking representing a very young organization whose name is awful, the worst acronym you can imagine, United Cities and Local Governments, UCLG. It's very bad. It is quite a young organization which was founded in 2004, but some organizations existed previously. After the First World War, the International Union of Local Authorities was founded, aiming mainly to promote sistership among European cities. And then after the Second World War, another organization was founded, mainly trying to invite cities to cooperate in development cooperation projects. These two organizations were invited by United Nations to merge and to become one organization, the voice of cities to the United Nations system. And this is when United Cities and Local Governments was born in 2004. So the organization is quite new. The secretariat is extremely scarce in resources, any kind of resources, but the mission is not humble. The mission is to guarantee that international programs are meaningful to citizens, and local governments, elected local governments, are crucial to land international processes, and the voice of citizens is also crucial to reach international processes. This organization, United Cities and Local Governments, was born in 2004 with a cultural program. Because in 2002, some people that were meeting in Porto Alegre in Brazil decided that it has come the time to have a declaration saying that cultural policies are crucial for local development. The environment actors had international declarations. The social actors had written and were implementing declarations on equity, struggle against poverty, but we, actors in cultural policy, we didn't have such a declaration. Those people that were that met in Porto Alegre in 2002 decided to write an Agenda 21 for culture, a document that condenses all what we knew in 2002, 3, 4, and after 5 drafts, the document was approved in Barcelona in May 2004. All what we knew about local cultural policies in 2004. Precarious knowledge, because there is progress in this field, but in 2004 we knew that cultural policies at a local level cannot be too institutionalized, because then cultural life is frozen. We knew that active participation of citizens is key to cultural vitality. We knew also that there were cultural rights. Citizens have cultural rights, and this declaration very explicitly referred to cultural rights. We also knew that cultural policies cannot be written in isolation to other domains of local policies, that they have to be solid and at the service of citizens with the cooperation of professionals, but that they cannot be implemented in isolation. They have to be implemented also observing and including social, economic, and territorial challenges in its implementation. After some years, the organizations connected to Agenda 21 for Culture are around 430, 440, and this map illustrates a city map in 2009, showing the people and the organizations that we were connecting. Since 2004, what we have tried to do is we have translated Agenda 21 for Culture into several languages, 19. We have a website. This is the website in which we try to upload all documents related to cultural policies of cities, cultural policies of municipalities, and also processes, international processes that give strength to meaningful local cultural policies. We have also created a small fund which tries to support training, capacity building, and implementation of local cultural policies at a local level. We do not intervene unless there is a local request. And what we have found in these years, we already knew it in 2004, but this has emerged very clearly during the last years, is that the implementation of local cultural policies, the departments for culture, sometimes are isolated. They are not recognized as crucial actors for sustainable development, for local development. And this is because they are faced with this triangle. The triangle of sustainable development, as was coined by the Brundtland Report in 1987, and also was, ratified by the Earth Summit in 1992, is a triangle with the economy, the social, and the environment. This is not a sacred paradigm. We are allowed to change it if it does not reflect reality and if it is not useful to transform reality. My opinion and the position of United Cities and local governments is that this triangle is not useful anymore. It does not reflect the life of a citizen. We are not homo economicus. We are worried about equity, but social life is, culture has to do with social life, but it is not only about equity. We human beings, we have our own rights, and our freedom is to choose what we want to do, and it is with active participation in cultural activities that we become more human beings, more citizens. This triangle is not useful neither to explain local policies. a city or a nation, if it uses this triangle, it loses, it abandons key concepts for the future, for the sustainable development of a territory, a city or a nation. The memories, the creativity, the diversity, the rituality, the critical knowledge, they are never in the debate because they are not easily channeled by any of the three sides of the triangle. You could say culture is social, but I would say economy is also social. Of course. But the situation is even more evident if you put this triangle from a world perspective. Today we know that we need the visions, the conception of the world as seen from many different places on Earth. We cannot accept Western paradigms, Western visions to be universal. We need to know how life is experienced, how life is lived by other people living on Earth. So this triangle is not useful to human rights perspective citizens. It's not useful for cities and nations. It is not useful at a global scale. So this is why we were courageous enough to say we are suggesting, United Cities and local governments, we are suggesting to evolve this triangle towards a square, the square of sustainable development, and this is why we embarked on a campaign. Nancy, thank you for saying that we wrote this declaration. The World Council of United Cities approved this declaration in 2010, and this declaration is the energy that we are using to influence the Secretariat of Rio+20 and the states that are negotiating the final declaration of Rio+20 to say something on culture. Let me say I am shocked because nobody else before in this conference mentioned that what we are discussing we have a window opportunity in Rio+20. If the current paragraph 16 of the zero draft is kept at the end of the final declaration of Rio+20, we will have the opportunity to discuss what is the relation between culture and sustainability in the next 5, 6, 7 years. We will have a long-term opportunity to discuss about these issues. If the negotiators, if the European Union, if the United States, if the G77 dislike this paragraph, which is already written, but negotiations will be tough, if they dislike this paragraph, we will lose our opportunity. And I am shocked that this is not referred to previously in this conference. So, Marco, please. Yes? Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you. Excuse me, perhaps I was not paying attention, but I didn't hear explicitly paragraph 16. I didn't hear explicitly zero draft. Perhaps I missed it. I beg your pardon. But I want to insist. A coalition of states should push the negotiators in Rio to have this paragraph 16, to widen the presence of culture in the operational side of the Declaration of Rio, and we are struggling with all our forces to have this in Rio+20. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry, Nancy, I was longer than expected. Thank you.
I go.
Less for me, more time for you guys.
Oh.
Just a minute. Yes.
He's the boss. He's the boss. This is yours. All right. Thank you. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everybody. So as Nancy already mentioned, the long version of my thoughts there you find here in English and German. And the idea, or the concept, the need for a fund for aesthetics and sustainability, these ideas are deeply rooted in my experience as a short-time senator of culture, science and research in Berlin, and also as the curator of the Cultural Capital Fund, where I experienced the hard way that politics is not driven by a holistic perspective, by an overall responsibility, but that governmental thinking and acting is determined by division into hermetic departments and segregation. Sustainability, environmental department. You, as a cultural senator, what is your concern about? I mean, I'm sorry, it's not your issue. And this is one of the most heard and listened excuses or sentence that my colleagues won't say, I'm sorry, this is not your concern, or I'm not responsible. So everything that could be merging, being corporations, it's excluded. And it's unfortunately not only politics that works this way, but most private and public trusts, foundations, funds follow the same principle. Their segregation and excluding criteria are called not in our profile or not corresponding our portfolio. So I needed 3 years to get financed an exhibition about aesthetics and sustainability, because wherever I went, people said, from the cultural side, but that's eco something. And the eco something said, well, but I'm sorry, we are not dealing with the arts. So in the end of the statement, I will give you some examples how in which dimension this fund is needed. And unfortunately, yesterday, with the high potential of the podium from yesterday evening, I hoped that we will start to have a new idea about foundations, because it started with Sarat, who said the current foundations tend to give the answers before questions can raise up, but he didn't allow a question, and there was also no answer. So I was really disappointed, I have to say. And even more, I am really very grateful that the Heinrich-Böll Foundation underlines with that conference and also with this forum about a fund for aesthetics and sustainability that we have to find new ways of collaboration, because the old containers also for the art projects fundings, they are not corresponding anymore what art is doing since a lot of time. So I hope with the help of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation, we could start like having a hat, you say headstone? Grundstein, mon Dieu. But I don't like this word. Okay, foundation stone for a fund of... a foundation, okay. So the proposal for a fund of aesthetics and sustainability, of course, refers to the fourth neglected dimension of sustainability in every manifesto, in every nice little opening speech of tremendous important conferences. They say, we have three dimensions of the ecology and the sustainability, and in the end they say, and there's also culture. So this is the little kid at the end who can interfere, but of course there is no funding, and there is also no important, and there is also no structure in politics to think sustainability as a cultural issue. So the proposal is based on the following assumptions, observations, and experiences that we live in an area of comprehensive social transition, in an area of the not anymore and not yet. There is no longer hope for more, better, and faster, and there will be no return to the times of a carefree consumption of resources or full employment or welfare structures that focus on human dignity. The diagnosis of not anymore, not yet is the point of departure for implementing aesthetics into the debate on sustainability. It is based on the claim that artistic strategies are the best for radically open contents and for dealing with gaps, which are the characteristics of the fluid modernity, as Sigmund Baumann calls it. Being interstitial means tolerating ambivalence. Artists have more practice at that than others because they specialize in transitions, intermediate certainties, and laboratories. If we agree that the most important resource of the 21st century is creativity, as Richard Florida expressed it, which is not, as we know, a natural resource in the ground or something that can be stored, rather it flows and requires supportive conditions in order to continuously renew itself and thus be a source of sustainability. Creativity should not be understood as an exclusive good. It needs free access to an education and an environment that understands creativity as an ability inherent to everybody and one that needs to be fostered and developed. Therefore, kindergartens and schools are the places where it is determined whether creativity acts as a processor in the development of something that is socially larger and also economically more potent. The potential of art, as well as of the humanities, the culture, and social sciences, are underestimated and underutilized when it comes to the need of sustainable action. To develop sustainability as a powerful tool of change, we should rather follow the notion of St. Francis of Assisi, perhaps the first ecologist in history, who defined already 1225 sustainability quite widespread. I quote, per lo quale le tue creature dai sustentamento. That means through which you give all your creatures sustenance or sustain them. I mean, this is the most broad idea you can have for sustainability. Because even though all experts have in numerous manifestos and publications asserted that the cultural and aesthetic dimension of sustainability is indispensable for raising humanity's awareness, it remains, 20 years after UN Summit of Rio, largely unaddressed. How different this Franz von Assisi idea, ay caramba, 2 minutes, how different to the term of political jargon, sustainability immediately became meaningless because of its inflammatory, narrow, and the same time undifferentiated use. So it is hardly surprising that issues of sustainability are seen from most individuals as non-essential and unconnected to their life. And all the criteria of foundings and governmental issues do not refer to it. Therefore, we need this unbelievable good idea of the fund. And as I just want to give you a few examples, because there is no foundation, I could imagine, that merges for artists and scientists on the same hand. If you do a study as a researcher, scientific researcher, it's very normal that you get like 3 years' time to develop. As an artist, if you get 3 months, you are really heavy. 3 weeks is better, and then the result has come immediately. So what is Gustavo Romano doing? He I think this is one of the most important things we could think about, that sustainability needs time, needs deceleration. And what he is doing, he is establishing a new category, a new currency, and the currency is lifetime, is time. So you can sell and buy times, and of course it would be wonderful if you could, together with a researcher, they could establish, they could really think about how we can introduce time as a new model. This is a complicated project, but an artist from Korea living in America, and she wondered if the Western way to bury people is the right thing to do. Because we with the 6 feet under idea, we put people so deep that no bug, nothing, no life can try to, how you say that, zersetzen? Yeah, okay. So, and also a dead body in America remains double of time in the earth than in Europe because of the formaldehyde. So they, I mean, this is crazy. So she is offering a new burial practice, which is really quite interesting. And of course, she would need a fund like this to develop more this practice. Nela Acevedo, an artist from Brazil, she should be invited to every important climate or whatever conference, because her fragile œuvre d'art, it's a central way to make understand what climate warming is doing to us all, and the way how individually these figures melt is not only touching but gives a good idea of the fragility of mankind. Anta Lagna, an artist from Hungary, he developed a system, the human symbiotic plant, that gives us back O2 and sucks CO2. Of course, it would be needed in a cooperation with a scientific person to deepen that and go further on. This is an artist from Switzerland. She explored, after Chernobyl, all the fallout regions, and she collected bugs. She's a specialist on bugs. She collected over 60,000, and she found every bug, almost every bug, damaged. And if they lose their symmetry, they lose orientation and they lose life. No scientific foundation would ever support her. And of course, the artists say, well, but this is science. I mean, we cannot give you money for a project like this. I could continue. I can't. I thank you for listening, and I also thank you if you bring the idea of a fund for aesthetics and sustainability, which must also have a new dimension concerning the national input, because most foundations work the national way, or in this restricted European way. You need 3 countries. If you don't have 3 countries, you cannot apply. This is all bullshit. We need new containers, we need new structures, and we need also new money for artistic activities. They go more and more in the social relevance space, and this is not to be paid from the small amount of cultural funding money. Thanks.
Thank you both. I should have come up and said thank you. you too. And I was just thinking that bug one, the project you just mentioned, I saw that in Vancouver, juxtaposed with Audubon prints of the natural world, which is seen as a landmark in art history.
I think nobody can understand you if you...
Oh, sorry. Over to you.
Thanks. Shua, 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 shua. The tears of life fill the rivers of freedom. Shua, 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 shua. The tears of life fill the rivers of freedom. Shua, 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 shua. The tears of life fill the rivers of freedom. Good morning. So this music was the favorite music of Maria Espírito Santo da Silva. And I dedicate this contribution to her life project, the extraction of sustainable medicines, the extraction of indigenous foods and arts without damaging the trees, the Brazil nut trees, which she died protecting from her land. She was assassinated on the 24th of May last year, along with her compañero, Zé Claudio. And the assassination of small farmers is a tragedy, because they are the front line to protecting the lungs and the saliva of the world. But the assassination of a rural educator is catastrophic, particularly a woman who organized other women who have to lie to study to their husbands and then pay the price with their life when they choose to become educators themselves and go to meetings in schools. But then to assassinate an arts educator, a person who understands that we are all excluded from our own humanity in being denied the potential to develop these specific intelligences that correspond to each of our sensory languages, is extremely, extremely painful. And when I sang this song for the first time to the World Social Forum International Council a few hours after I learned about the death, of course I cried. And I don't think anyone in that council had seen politics cried. I don't think they'd seen the performance of emotion, not in the sense of artifice, but the performance of humanity. And so I dedicate this presentation to her life project and to the 25 million people that I join with in a rural trade union in the whole of Brazil. But I could also dedicate this to Eric Fromm, who taught me about the fear of freedom. Not that we are necessarily bound to a compulsive performance of our past reproducing itself in the future, but to the need to acquire the courage to perform the new without fear of social exile or death. In that sense, I perform a new humanity and attempt to perform a new paradigm. And you can see here a Korean teacher, perhaps São Paulo, perhaps Seoul, perhaps Berlin, perhaps London, unqualified, incapable of dealing with the performance of a paradigm in crisis inside her school. Now here you can see an extraordinary scene inside the school where Maria taught. A soldier from the National Force, so moved by the eco-pedagogical performances inside the school that he picked up a guitar to sing his popular culture. I don't think he was aware of the paradigmatic significance of this moment. A person rehumanizing themselves with others, through others, but significantly inside a theatre of cooperation and sustainable transformation. And sustainable transformation includes the importance of preserving. I remember an autistic person opening a World Congress in Brazil saying, I don't really like transformation. And it was about transformation. Because it doesn't give me the time to adapt to change. And all of us reflected. But this military officer was embodying a new possibility, transforming himself into a new territory in a space that affirmed risk and the right to experiment without the fear of death. In all of our teacher education work, and I deliberately don't use the word training, in all of our teacher education work, the space of the school is transformed consciously into another kind of theatre, so that we are considering the sustainability of human beings who advocate, who intervene, who create policy with others as key resources. Here you can see Margaret, both as an actor and as an audience, in a montage which shows that we are at all times, even when we are dead and when we are sleeping and when we are unborn, both actors and audiences. And you can see cultural activists emerging out of trade union activists, emerging out of farmers in the image below, playing with the power of aesthetic space, that focused, concentrated, creative gaze that transforms all public space through theatrical principles into the potential of democracy. It is the learning of a new paradigm of participatory democracy. In this case, through storytelling, as Derrida would say, learning to ask radical questions. As Edward Bond would say, looking for a radical innocence as a way of working together. How can activists in any parliament, in any network, in any social movement, in any place, work together without the arts of cooperation, of sharing and enlarging public space to create collective stages? They can, through theatre, dramatize their histories in order to see them. And they can look at themselves through the images that others create about them. But here you can see an extraordinary process where people decolonize their memory in order to decolonize the imagination. The decolonizing of that food that sustains the imagination, memory and history. And here you can see teachers who are also trade union activists, who are also policymakers, who are also the people who intervene in the World Social Forum, creating forms, cultures of dialogic co-responsibility in order to create new interventions. You can see artists from peripheries entering universities to transform universities and educational theatres into cultural projects. You can see entire schools being transformed into cultures of sustainability where parents and teachers learn to build the popular comprehension of the importance of culture in order to give politicians the self-confidence and the will to represent them. You can see in my experience of co-founding the World Alliance for Arts Education, the necessity of creating the self-confidence to bring together the artistic languages and processes of learning and teaching so that we can advocate with a different kind of performance what we know and discover in every part of our educational life and professional life. You can see young people here performing in Europe the paradigm of competitive education, smiling as they mask their individualistic desires. You can see people from Africa performing their fear of the future, people from Brazil performing their suicidal self-defense in relation to the future, and young people from China wearing glasses to protect themselves from global warming. You can see, in other words, a performance of self-protection about an insecure world and the need for a new paradigm. In the World Social Forum, when I participate in the International Council, after 10 years, culture is still seen as a decorative, leisure time activity inside the forum. It's not understood as the foundation of all consent, of self-knowing, of reflexive politics and participatory democracy. We are still, even inside the social movements, struggling for those movements who hold banners celebrating Paulo Freire to understand what is a politics of questions, a culture of dialogue, the possibility of reflexive, not critical, reflexive thinking. I showed this image yesterday of the police transforming themselves, and significantly through dance. Not because the body doesn't lie, but because dance has the potential to transform muscular memory into new forms of human relationships that enable advocacy through cooperation and daring to transform territories. And I close with this double proposal. I participate in the Brazilian network of arts educators and the Latin American network of sustainable social transformation through the arts. We propose cultura viva comunitária, community living culture, as a policy guaranteeing 1% of the economy dedicated to the development of points of culture, thinking of the metaphor of acupuncture or the metaphor of a net, where different communities define and develop and reclaim and create their own cultural foundations as the basis of decision-making and policy-making in order to build a different kind of political life and civil society. The two images you can see on your right are images that are creating this process in the most vulnerable and culturally rich community in the south of the Amazon, where I live and work. A process which the people who are funding, the mining giants that are funding the Belem hydroelectric dam and plant, is attempting to buy. And I end with this provocation, the concern to find ways of sustaining through solidarity economics independent cultural processes which not only affirm the right to cultural self-determination, but the potential of publishing and popularizing a paradigm of participatory democracy which understands culture and the arts as the foundations of all social life and future change. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for very provocative and very diverse presentations showing the wide array of initiatives that are out there that are proving that local action can have international ramifications and ripple effects. And also looking at how to make these sustainable and to move them forward, and the importance of networks and collaborations. And I'm going to actually throw it out to this floor for comments and questions, and we'll collect a few rather than... did you have any questions for each other to start? Okay, just a minute. They're running a mic. They're running a mic to you.
Thank you to all three of you. To those of you that don't know me, I'm Oleg Kofod from Copenhagen, working with Cultura 21. And, well, thanks a lot. That was really very inspiring. I have two things that I would like to remark upon. They're not direct questions, but a comment and an invitation. The comment is that I'm actually quite convinced that you all agree with me, so it may be... it may be superfluous to make this comment, but I find I have a background in many different areas, and I studied natural sciences before I went into philosophy and before I started working with art. I have a background in social science as well, and I've been moving about quite a lot between sciences, etc. And I just want to make the comment that I find that it's extremely important that we continue to remind ourselves, and maybe also to remind the rest of the world and the people around us and the founders, and the foundations, the funders, that more money for this area does not mean more money for us to look at ourselves, nor does it mean more money to do art as such, per se, but also to embrace and continue to, and to continue to embrace sciences, areas of politics, other spheres. As I find was relevant. I mean, it was present definitely in your presentations in some ways. Just a comment. Even though it's difficult, and even though you do get rejected at times, and people tell you, you're not a scientist, etc. But we should continue to embrace. So quickly, the invitation is that, just a slight optimistic. A slight cause for optimism from a tiny little part of the world. When I got a call from the Nordic Council of Ministers 2 weeks ago, inviting me to help them develop and support their work with developing a new strategy for sustainable development in the Nordic countries, and a new strategy especially for how the cultural sphere and arts can help and play a stronger role in defining this new strategy for sustainable development, which is a point that has been already approved by the ministers, by the governments of the Nordic countries as something that they want to focus on. Of course, this is easier said than done, but what the cause for the invitation was that, one, they know that they've been working with a much too narrow definition of culture. Two, they've been working with a much too narrow definition of sustainability. And three, they have no idea how to go where they want to go. So they want help. And so do I.
Good luck.
No, good luck to all of us, because of course I will invite you to keep helping me, just as you helped me a little bit today. Okay, thank you.
I have a question to somebody of the public. Ooh, Christine Merkel, you're already looking on me. Because reading also this little brochure from Jordi, I wonder if... Not yours? I wonder if UNESCO could be a partner for an international fund for aesthetics and sustainability, because I think the Heinrich-Böll is very much willing, and I appreciate very much that Barbara, she starts with little steps of civic ziviler Ungehorsam. Disobedience. Isn't that disobedience? Yeah, okay. But she needs, of course, a strong partner. She needs an international partner. And I think the provocation, we can start here with the help of Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung, because, you have that stupid idea of the foreign ministry. They should do somehow political education, and culture is unique with the Goethe Institute. This is, so much far away from reality, and she is very cool in disobeying, but I think we need a very strong partner, and as Christine Merkel is here, I would really know how you see that and how you could help this international acting fund, not another national little chiquissimo foundation, but an international one.
Thanks for pulling that question out in a very direct way. I see three elements. One, and Dan commented on it, and Jordi and I have been plotting on that for years. Of course, we have the dilemma that in the whole sustainability debate, as you rightly said, the point of arts and culture is not yet understood. But we have a very clear time window. Just yesterday I saw on my computer the first draft for Rio Plus 20. So for the moment there's a tiny little paragraph, 6 lines, which are not bad as a starting point. Exactly, Barbara has also done her homework. It's paragraph 16. So this is one level, of course, paper level, but unless we do also have these commitments, it's difficult to get things done. I think the convention is center because there we have this famous Article 13, where this link with sustainable development is made in a crystal clear way. But as I said this morning, this is the map. We need the people who really want to go this road with us. And I don't really see easily at this point in time the political energy. What we would need is like we had 10 years ago when people like Sheila Kopf from Canada, Anna Lindh was still Swedish foreign minister. You would need like 3-4 very visible figures ideally from different regions of the world, be it Indonesia, be it Brazil, and let's cook on that, because unless we get this energy going again, we can have fantastic debates among ourselves. Second element, a fund is only...
When you started to speak about money.
So money, money, and all of a sudden battery is empty. What do you think?
Sustainable mind.
I think it's always good really to start ambitious, not start small, but because this is extremely relevant for many people. The point is, how can money be pulled in a way that is easily accessible and flexible enough to do exactly these exploratory new things? As I said, both in aesthetic terms, in terms of social practice, in terms of really connecting with unconnected audiences. So in this sense, any UN system which is intergovernmental by definition is not an easy first target. So what I keep wondering, I have extremely good experiences coming from the peace research and peace movement myself. with a couple of private foundations, including Berghoff Foundation based here in Berlin, who over time mobilized really substantial monies in a very targeted, very flexible, very much to the point view. So I think it's really worthwhile seeing how we can create a platform of a couple of those foundations who might have these flexibilities. Public monies always have this governance culture. So this is for good reasons, because taxpayers need to know where the money goes. But in the process, it kills all of us who have to work with these monies and obey even longer sheets of rules. So I think it needs to be tested, because you have to be very clear on one thing. What was done with the Rio process, that the CHEF facility was introduced, which has substantial monies. Governments later never were willing again to do the same. So for the Diversity of Cultural Expression Convention, there is a fund which is only voluntary. So some governments have pledged, even publicly, and then they don't follow through their own pledges. So classical picture you always have. So this needs more sort of critical analysis, and to see what could be the best possible combination of getting some generous, like-minded, ideally private foundations who would have flexibility, who can be fast, can act, and combine that, because...
To find them. And you help us to find them.
Yeah, this is teamwork. Yeah? Do I know everything on the globe? No. So we have to talk to our Asian friends to see who are around, like these New Zealand millionaires who just started this Freedom to Create award. All of a sudden, a billionaire drops from the sky, says, I'm ready to invest in that. So we don't know. We have to send the message out, and then echo will come if there are people who resonate with that idea. Long answer to a short question.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shelley Sachs. I just want to make a plea, in a way, first to endorse and say thank you for all the good intentions to create such funds, but that if such funds are not also, right from the outset, going to fund the processes, and these are kind of eco-processes themselves, the processes by which the people emerge who can not only decide, but be in a process of perpetual reflection about what art, culture and sustainability are, we're going to end up with the same big pots of money. They do exist all over, where there are not sufficient people who manage those, and even when they call in all their friends and their friends call in their friends. And I think last night's awful situation with very erudite, seductive speakers was a picture of people who really don't know this field. But we actually have to get processes going that are simultaneous. And I think there are some huge funders, including UN, UNESCO kind of funding, who would appreciate that ongoing deliberative process from the bottom at the same time as the structures are being made. And I really appreciate that Heinrich-Böll is part of this process. I think Heinrich-Böll himself would be very glad to hear if such processes were part of, we don't need another organization first that will feed money down. We need to all be part of such forums. Thank you.
I think my contribution fits very well now, because I would underline that we need an integrative approach in policies. And don't forget education. Education for sustainable development. I have a chair for education for sustainable development at Leuphana University Lüneburg. And I see two streams discussing culture in the UNESCO now too. The one is cultural education. I like it, but I think we need to bring these streams together in culture and sustainability. And we are discussing not 4 pillars, but 4 dimensions since years in the field of education for sustainable development. And we know what potential we have when we also stress that the field of culture is a field for analyzing what is not sustainable and what is sustainable, but also a field for action to identify people who work together with us in the field of education. Education is formal education and informal education, of course. So we have the whole field of cultural institutions in this field too, and we work together with them. So we have to bring together these discourses. I'm very happy to see your 4 dimensions here, because we feel sometimes alone. We are discussing it since years, that we have to work with this model to include the different discourses. And I should like UNESCO to stress that there is not cultural education, but an integrative approach. I liked it very much that I was invited in the first conference of the convention in Essen, cultural diversity. So we Christine Merkel brought together these 2 discourses, and I think it's very, very necessary that we be aware of it. That we are aware of it. Okay, thank you.
A bit of a speaker's list. You? Right here and then see.
Yes, very, very fast. The zero draft of Rio Plus 20 has Article 16, paragraph 16, and this paragraph is in the analytical part of the declaration. There is nothing about culture in the operational part of the declaration. There are several articles on education in the operational part of the declaration, and it is, I believe, extremely difficult that there are articles on culture in the operational part. I believe it is too late. The declaration is now 20 pages long, and the European Union and the United States are saying that they wish a declaration of 5 pages. 5 pages. So as the cultural actors, we are weak. We do not convey a cohesive message. We do not have international civil society platforms that advocate for these causes. I believe Rio Plus 20 is already too late to have operational paragraphs on the role of culture in sustainable development. But paragraph 16 is a treasure, and it is a red line. I beg all of you that are actively engaged in influencing governments, mainly you, Oleg. Norway is negotiating alone, and they can introduce amendments as they wish. Not Sweden, not Finland, not Denmark, not Germany, because the position of the European Union is unified. But of course, the ministries of these countries can influence the position of the European Union. And I would say keeping paragraph 16 would be a red line the cultural actors should very clearly trace. Also you, Soraya, I think that Bangladesh is within the G77, and G77 has very, very active players within G77, Bangladesh, China, Brazil. And I also would beg the government of Bangladesh to trace a red line in these negotiations so that paragraph 16 is kept as one of the key elements in the final declaration. Nothing else. Thank you.
War schon dran. Du bist dran. Ja, ja.
I'm Eva Quistrup. I'm part of the Anna Lindh network and a long-time history with Rio and the Greens. And I'm very happy with Adrienne, Christine, and now you have been saying, I love it, how concrete you are and how realistic. I might remember that there was parts of the art community which have been present even in Rio, and they have been present very visible and very active, but they did not act as a lobby for themselves, and that was very interesting and politically very effective, I think, because they acted first giving a gift. That what meant giving a gift to the whole conference, to the people present there. That means not giving a gift to the government, but there are 1,000-side events there, and they presented themselves as part of the side events, not to have more and to be fragmented, but as a real gift because you could relax and enjoy there. There was a very fantastic art exhibition, eco-art. I think the name was even eco-art. So eco-art is present in the minds of many people who have been going there with open eyes and ears. And then we had feminist activists relating to special issues even in the conference. There was a wonderful exposition of feminist artists from California on the problems of uranium mining and nuclear testing. And we had a big tent with 1,000 women around the world who included art from different parts, but from the ground, combined with official and world-known artists. The same was at the Habitat Conference 1996 in Turkey. I think that part of the arts community and the curators and so on, that they did not realize that process the last 20 years, what was where there have been just real links. Now I would propose that beside what you proposed, there is another level where we can link art, politics, action, and the process, like Shelley said. There are the major groups, and that is special with the Rio Declaration, that the first time, it is not just a government declaration, it was the first time in UN history that so-called major groups, like women groups, indigenous people, and especially what is interesting for funding and cooperation, mayors and cities are involved. And one of the strongest networks related to the Rio Convention, which is called in some countries Agenda 21, which is an understandable name, and Copenhagen is keeping the tradition. The cities, and there is an ecological and sustainability city network, which I always try to pressure a little bit on women issue, but maybe you join me with pressuring them on art issues, is ECLI. And they have a wonderful network around the world with mayors. And they are something like the Professional Council, think tank and counseling network for mayors. And I think the major groups and the mayors could be, beside what you try to lobby now with the paragraphs and with big private foundations, could be very important links to support what Shelley said too, that you really embed yourself in the ongoing processes.
Thank you. Now this side, who was David? Was there anyone else? Okay, David.
Thank you. In no way do I want to discourage any of the initiatives that have been talked about already. We need as many initiatives as we can possibly think of. As many rich, as many diverse, as many creative initiatives as is possible for our species to be able to survive. I should actually say, by the way, in any of the introductions that I've received so far, I'm actually an artist. I'm actually an ecological artist. It's fundamental to my being, my culture. And that question of fundamental culture, I think, is something that we've stopped talking about. Maybe Dan brought it up, actually, because it's embedded in his whole being. But there's this thing of talking about institutions, about politics, about hanging on to this little flower of paragraph 16. Come on. How many conventions, how many summits, how many institutions, governments, corporations, organizations are not doing anything? Do we not realize actually that climate change, global warming, is actually happening now? This is a culture and a sustainable question that is not actually being addressed because we keep being distracted by our education systems that maintain our lack of cultural fundamental ideas and beliefs and being and embodiment. Okay? So free this up, please. You know, it's just getting into more policy speak. And the more policy speak actually stops things from happening rather than facilitating, liberating. Yeah, I'm sorry. The older I get, the more impatient I become.
Yeah.
Just like to say, David, I agree that, you know, climate change is happening now. But for somebody who's been working in India, where we don't have the policy and we don't have cultural policy in the way that I'm listening and the way it's being spoken about right now, I think one of the key things that happened was in 2008, as a practitioner, when the Goethe Institute co-funded with GTZ a huge project on art and ecology in the public realm, which I was very, privileged to be part of and delivered. And it was across 10 sites in Delhi. We did that. It worked for 10 days. It was an international project. So we managed to get some really interesting international as well as local artists and embedded it within the city with other players around it. But once that had gone, for somebody who saw the power of what it meant to do something in public spaces around such issues, for a public that does not have museums to go to, which does not, have exhibition spaces, where museum going is not a tradition, let's put it. We had to go back and say, okay, how do we continue doing that? And what Shelley said is so important. How do we keep that conversation going? And it was so important to get a little bit of funding from the Norwegians, actually. We have no local funding. For all the goodness of Indian, government saying, oh, this was great, because we did get them on board when it was this big blockbuster exhibition, in public space. We had to do it on very small money. But that has allowed us over the last 5 years, since 2008, to continuously do the kind of projects I spoke about yesterday. Small ones, hoping that it will build a critical mass at some point and will spill over. And I can't do it in public spaces all the time, though we try and push it. So I think to just say, policy doesn't work, I want a policy. I don't want it strangling me, but I want something like that which will support people who are committed to it. You speak from a position of where in England there have been possibilities of raising funding if you want to. We come from a position where we really have to push for every euro, rupee that we get. So I don't think it's okay to just dismiss it like that.
Must ask the boss.
Let's ask the boss, okay. I just would, following the discussion, I really would like to bring forward that we should not discuss the issue of policies as an either-or. I think here are many people around, diverse people, who have different skills and different approaches and different exercises and skills, and I really would like to ask for being together in a very clever division of labor. A division of labor for those who can do best what they can do. So this is what I would like to bring forward. And the second one, this is a very direct question to Adrienne. I think it was because of time scarcity that you couldn't elaborate a bit more. How you look, when you are proposing the fund, everybody here is very much concerned about that kinds of funds are needed, but on the other hand, not strangling. Yeah, what makes your fund more participatory, more democratic, more inclusive? Yeah, did you already think about the governance structure of such a fund? Who should decide upon? Yesterday, in my initial speech, I said clearly the funds we have now, they are very restricted. They are very elitist, I would say. It's not participatory. It's inclusive, exclusive little round of people who decide. And what makes the fund more participatory?
Well, of course, I have an ideal model in my head, starting that the juries must be interdisciplinary. This is the main issue, because you have either people, and this is what I left through as the curator of the Cultural Capital Fund, that everybody said, but this is somehow social. Take it out. It was only art-driven people who did not want to get an idea of that could be something else, you know. But of course, I also know that artists are very sensitive to the fact that they have to be eco-artists in terms of participating on any funding. This I would not agree on. So the money that comes from different organizations, from private people, whatever, they should be part of the jury. Of course, I'm thinking about an international structure, because the national born ideas, it's strangling us. It's not equivalent anymore. And of course, 5,000 euro in India can help maybe a bit more than the 5,000 here. But we have to negotiate that, and we have to negotiate that I would always say, let's have a jury for 3 years, then out. You know, out, next. And so we get, because you cannot have objective criteria. You can try to bring it in a quite you know what I mean. It should spread over different countries, and I think that could be a wonderful model. But again, I would want to say something. I don't want, if we start to think about that artists have a very precious contribution to all that uncertainties of the world, please don't put on them immediately that they have to be sustainable and this and that and new participatory. Then this is pretty too much. But we need also time to establish new structures, and we should do it with the help of public foundations, but also, of course, private people. And I think this can work if we understand what, of course, is in our mind, that also the structures has to be at the same time local and global, and then we can perfectly do something. Because now this art exhibition, examples to follow, that is traveling from concept on. It's a traveling exhibition, because I have a sharp critique concerning the way how the art fund trusts work. It's really the contrary of sustainability. Put an exhibition, 3 weeks on, chuck, next. And then be totally new in your ideas, next. So nothing can develop, and it's killing the arts if you really reduce them to an output of 3 weeks and then please have a new idea.
Sorry. Right, I want to complement what's been said, and just to give you a little context. I was president of IDEA, the International Drama Theatre Education Association, for 6 years, and before that, for 6 years of its General Council. And we are a direct partner of UNESCO. And I was also the coordinator of 4 world organizations of the arts education. And that wasn't referred to in my introduction. But what I'm saying is that in direct dealings with 120 countries, with national associations, I think we need to re-signify the arts. That's a Portuguese verb. What I'm trying to say is we need to reintegrate the arts as human languages and as pedagogical languages. And, UNESCO was able to rethink its own policy and rethink its own strategy when it was talking about a new paradigm rather than thinking about artists as individuals. So I'm talking about a profession, the teaching profession, which creates all other professions, and it also teaches people how to become parents. It develops those humanities that we perform in every sphere of our lives. So I was talking about the reintegration, the resignification and reintegration of the arts into every aspect of our education, teacher education, but our learning. And that doesn't mean 40 minutes or 80 minutes of the arts in a syllabus. It means understanding the arts as pedagogical languages. Now, there is a direct link between that kind of pedagogy or that kind of paradigm with health, with energy, with employment, with all of those different areas. And I was trying to link that understanding of a new paradigm to the lack of self-confidence and self-esteem that exists in all arts education organisations. And this, also linking it to an understanding that if you're going to create policy, you need to be building from parents' understanding, from children understanding, from teachers' understanding, in order to translate into school directors implementing, politicians having the confidence to argue. And I also am linking that to the fact I am part of a World Council of the World Social Forum that is deeply authoritarian, that uses time in a linear way, in an authoritarian way, where the most powerful, I'd say Eurocentric in thinking and practice, but the most authoritarian political practices are apparently linked to sustainability, to environmental concern, to diversity, etc., etc. So I'm trying to make a link to a woman who is a co-author of this book, but a woman who embodied that, and the murder of this woman was a deliberate political act. It was funded. I'm not talking about the mercenaries that killed her. I'm talking about the consortium of multinationals that are building hydroelectric dams in partnership with a popular government in Brazil. And I'm saying, if you don't think about this in paradigmatic terms, your activists are unsustainable, your politicians are unsustainable, and you can't perform a new politics. And Brazil, in Porto Alegre in the early 21st century, practiced a participatory budget, developed forums which created charters, which created declarations, which became the foundations for debates inside governments, for debates inside NGOs, etc., etc. Now, I'm trying to argue for not one strategy for funding this, but recognizing that the networks that exist in other continents where popular movements or social movements are still alive and still effective, those networks have already created examples of where 1% of the budget, of a federal budget, is directed towards cultural action. But it's not. Yeah, I know. No, I'm not arguing for. I'm not arguing that's enough. For instance, I'm not arguing. For instance, in Medellin, in Colombia, 5% of the budget was dedicated to the investment in community living culture. And I stress community. I think it's been understated inside this conference. But I stress community because without community, you do not have security. And without security, you cannot risk the new. And it concerns me that within consumerism, people spend their creativity. That's my greatest concern, that the greatest, we've never had this in human history before, where the tools determine the culture. I mean, where the tools are so advanced and moving so quickly that you don't have the time to culturally adapt so that you use the tools rather than the tools use you. But it concerns me that in the industrialization of the Amazon, which is what's happening to the rivers and the forests of where I live, which is why I showed you that sculpture created by 800 farmers. In the industrialization of the Amazon, people want the shopping centers of the West. And those shopping centers are places which destroy community, which atomize families, which destroy cultural histories and cultural traditions, and which make it difficult to then defend living resources. So when I talked about a policy of living community culture, I'm talking about, this is the first time I've responded, by the way, to all the things. I'm just saying, this, for 5 years in Brazil, they practiced a policy which wasn't law, which is living culture, points of culture, 3,000 points of culture in the most vulnerable parts of the country to transform socio-economic and ecological circumstances. But what I'm trying to define here is the use of networks and social movements which creates the foundations of a new paradigm of sustainable politics. Thank you. Hildegard. Thank you.
And Shirley has another.
So I'm Hildegard Kurt, having listened to this very important exchange and being aware that this is a rare opportunity of people being together, working in the same field. I would like to stress one strand that has surfaced again and again. How can we make sure that such a new fund will be really participatory and really based on bottom-up acting and on basic democracy? So my suggestion would be, let us not wait until the fund exists before we find out about how making it participatory, but rather let us consider the making of this fund as a participatory process, so that we could, for instance, adopt the model of a round table process, including the players in the field internationally, ideally, and make sure, unless this new fund really makes a difference up from his getting conceived, up from the very first step and phase, we cannot be sure that it will be in any relevant way different from the other cultural and art funds that we already have.
Well, she came late. I already said that.
I know we're over time. We'll just give a few moments to Jordi if you have any last words. Don't put pressure. And then we can continue these conversations over lunch downstairs, which have been very thought-provoking, as you can tell.
No, just to say, I completely agree with the colleagues of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation. We need policies and we need activism, of course, and artists, of course. And I would like to invite the artists and their organizations to contribute to these debates. We lack you. We lack you. We need your message. We need your pressure at the international spaces, moments in which this is discussed. Unless we have you, all our efforts of advocacy will not be successful. Also a word to Pooja. The development table. At the development table, there are 3 seats. One is very powerful, which is the economy. And in the best of the cases, there are people talking about equity and people talking about balance and in the environment. And we need, I'm sure you would like to sit in the fourth seat, culture and the arts. Thank you.
Thank you all. This has been wonderful. And thank you for sticking in and participating so enthusiastically. Again, there is lunch right now downstairs, and I'll let you flock these guys and take them down to lunch and continue the conversation. I think there's been some wonderful bridge building that's happened as part of this conversation, and I have to say that to actually have someone from the educational area within Education for Sustainability talking in the same, being in the same room with someone like Jordi talking about the municipalities' initiatives to try to make change at the international level is, I'd say, extremely rare, if never found. So it's, as well as the artist listening so intensely to these processes, and all of them are necessary. Thank you.